But when Stalin's troops marched into eastern Poland, into my mother's village, they arrived with lists of people that were to be deported to labour camps. But my grandfather had fought in the Polish army against the Russians in 1920, so his name was on the list. It wasn't just the head of the family, the whole family was deported. So they were taken off their farm, taken to the nearest railway station and pushed into cattle trucks, not knowing where you were going or how long the journey would take. My family was just one family amongst a million. Polish people were deported from eastern Poland to these labour camps in Siberia. And then from there, this incredible journey south. I wanted them to show all the different kinds of accommodation that they had to stay in. You know, they had no choices. It was, you will stay there, you will go there. They had no agency over their lives at all. So I thought by showing the kinds of places they stayed, it helps to think, well, gosh, you know, why did they have to stay there? And of course, some of the accommodation really wasn't very nice at all, but it was a roof over your head. The first two panels show happy life in Poland, just a normal, settled life. And the second panel is my family's modest little house in the village in Poland, with the sorts of things that they had in their house that they had to leave behind because they were allowed to take just some warm clothes and some food for a month. So all their possessions and their dog, they had to just abandon. They were taken by sledge to the railway station and onto these awful trains with the cattle trucks. And then the accommodation in the Gulag with these awful barracks. Apparently my mother's family was quite lucky because the barracks were there, they had a roof over their head, but some of these people were just kind of abandoned in a clearing in the forest and had to dig holes for them. It was just unspeakably awful. But from the Gulag, from the barracks down into Uzbekistan, they spent 18 months in the labour camp, and of course lots of them died. I mean, those people weren't expected to survive more than one winter, perhaps two. But then Hitler invaded Russia, and Stalin then joined the Allies. So these people released from the labour camps without any help, you know, open the gate, here's a paper to say who you are, off you go. And they had to travel by train, by whatever means, to get south to the recruitment centre, through Russia itself, down to the stands, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, where the men would sign up to join this new army. And the women and children followed them. They found themselves living in clay houses with a family and having to work on a collective farm. As this army slowly got together, it was going to move across the Caspian Sea into Persia, modern-day Iran. The British Army tents, they were very characteristic shape. Some people were in abandoned stables. At one point, my mother was sleeping on the floor of a warehouse. From Iran, there's another panel showing Isfahan, where the children would have stayed in these lovely palaces. There were so many of them there. It was known as the city of Polish children. From Isfahan, Iran, then down the coast of East Africa to these camps of thatched round huts. They did manage to make them quite comfortable, but there were downsides like snakes and various horrible insects to contend with. The people that stayed in those camps into the early 1950s, when the British administrations decided to shut those camps in East Africa, the Polish people were allowed to come to the UK, but they had nowhere to stay. Again, where do we stay? Well, the Americans and Canadians who'd been in the UK and who had left, they had camps of Nissen huts. So a lot of the Polish people found themselves living in Nissen huts, and some in Scotland. But the very final panel shows it's called Staying Forever, because of course a lot of these people never made it. And the path of exile has cemeteries all along it. My grandfather died in Uzbekistan. I wanted to really show the long shadow of war, because my mother recovered quite well from the terrible time she had. But of course, a lot of people didn't. So for some people, the war never ends. It's never over once something like that has happened. So it casts a very long shadow across people's lives. Why I created the first two panels to show a happy life is that these people did have a life. They have a backstory, you know, they had normal lives, they had a house, and they had children who went to school, and there were weddings and celebrations, and then suddenly there's this rupture. It's so abrupt that all ends. And from them having this life where they made decisions for themselves about what they would do and how they would live, they're in the hands of people who will make all the decisions, and you can't decide what you're going to do. This loss of agency overnight, where suddenly you're just going to be moved around and somebody else is going to decide where. When we see pictures of refugees, we see them as refugees, these people who've just arrived, or who are fleeing, who are getting on trains or boats, but actually they had this other life like we have here and we take for granted. These people have an identity other than refugee or forced migrant.